Hello everybody and welcome back to another video, and welcome to a new series called OC Profiles. In this series we'll be taking a look at all 6 of my OCs, and I'll be talking about their character, their origins, and who they interact with. So to start this series off, we're going to do one which I have the most to say about, and that OC is Max. You know, it's kind of funny. You'd think that someone like Yoshi or Sweetheart would have the most to say about. But nope, it's Max. That's just the way it's worked out. So let's start with the basics. So who the hell is Max? Well, let me explain. Max is a Great Western Hall class, and the reason why I made him this specific engine is because I've always found it weird how the original Railway series books and the TV shows never really delved into Great Western tender engines.
Hey, Future Yoshi here. You know your past self said that, but, what the fuck is that then? You fucking dipshit.
They've done the tank engines, but why not the tender engines? It just kind of rubs me the wrong way, personally. On top of this, I decided to give Max a number which was worn by an actual Hall class, 4975. I'm not sure who wore this number in real life, but in my headcanon, Max wears this number. I also did this to keep with a tradition with the Railway series in particular, as both Duck and Oliver have real life numbers which are in the real world, so I figured I'd also do the same with mine just to help keep the little pattern that these Great Western trio have now. You may have also realised by now that when Max is on the Great Western, he's wearing the proper Great Western stuff, but on Sodor, all that stuff is missing. I'll explain my reasoning for this when we get to it. Something you've probably realised is that Max is black. However, most Great Western engines of this time were green. Again, there's some reasoning behind this, and I'll get to that when we get to the main heavy lore stuff, but for now, it's a custom livery, I'll put it that way. This last thing is more so kind of visual, but you can see that Max's drawings change. That's because I've used different things. Originally I used Henry for his kind of drawing basis, as Henry was the closest thing Thomas and Friends has to a Hall class, whereas now I've gone back and redrawn him in an actual proper Hall class. But that's more so a visual thing with the drawings here, rather than actual lore stuff. Speaking of the lore, let's go there next. So we've talked about Max's appearances. Now let's head into his backstory. Max originally started life on the Great Western. However, when he emerged from the works, his paintwork was different than everyone else's. There was a little bit of a paint crisis at the works, and Max had to be painted into a different color. The only color on hand was black, so that's what he was painted with. Yeah, it's a little bit of a shitty excuse, but it gives me a reason for why he's black, okay? While at his time on the Great Western, Max was mostly pulling long passenger trains. Though he did pull the occasional goods trains every once in a while, but they were a lot more scarce and in between. So much so that Max barely knew how to handle trucks before he came to Sodor. It's embarrassing for him to admit this, but hey ho. This was Max's life until the 1930s. He'd grown accustomed to his life on the Great Western and was looking forward to the next day. Max had made a lot of friends on the Great Western, and they obviously liked him back. They found him as good company for the day and the night. But little did any of them know that elsewhere, Max's life was about to take a turn. on the Northwestern Railway, number 3 has taken a serious accident while pulling the Flying Kipper. The accident has left him so badly damaged that there's been no choice but to send him away for an overhaul. And this will mean he will be out of service for the foreseeable future. On top of their own work, the engines on the Northwestern now have to deal with Henry's work as well as their own. This didn't go well down with them, and it became very clear that the workload was just too heavy for them. The last time they did without Henry, they at least had the help of the loaned engines. Here, it was just like, what, 2 engines? James and Edward? Because I doubt Gordon did shit, and Percy definitely wouldn't do shit, and I'm pretty sure Thomas would tell them to fuck off. So, yeah, 2 engines to handle their own work and Henry's work just didn't work. The workload ended up so bad that they had to get a substitute for Henry's work. And that engine was Max. Yeah, Max basically just ties into a massive headcanon I have, which I'm going to explain right now. Long story short, after the Flying Kipper crash, Henry's work becomes too much for the other engines to handle, and a substitute engine is brought in while he's away. Now, in the Railway series canon, this can be passed off as just some random engine, and I actually have some evidence to kind of back it up a bit. It's not concrete evidence, and I'm not expecting anyone to believe me, but here goes. Here's my evidence. And you're probably just thinking, what? It's just an illustration. Yeah, but look at the engine in the back. It looks like James. But if we go back to the first book, there was also a red engine with very similar veins to James. And that's the same engine there. So, in the Railway series canon, that engine could be the one with the substitute. But in Yoshi's headcanon, it's Max who comes in. Yeah, it's just one massive headcanon, and if you don't like it, then, well, you don't have to believe it with me. Max soon got sent to work. He was mostly hauling goods trains, but remember what I said? Max barely knew how to handle trucks before coming to Sodor, and this led to some embarrassing accidents. It all came to a head when Max tried to pull the Flying Kipper for the first time. He missed the points against him and crashed. Although the crash wasn't so severe that he needed to be sent away for repairs, it was a big problem, and the Falcon Controller got so angry with him that he took away the Great Western things on him. So that's why Max no longer has his nameplate or his number boards on him. Some engines didn't take it well, but Gordon just laughed it off. Max tried to ignore him at first, but eventually got to the point where he got so annoyed that he just couldn't deal with him anymore and just left when he wasn't around the yard, when he was out on his express duties. Unfortunately, karma is a bigger bitch than you, and one day Gordon didn't take on any coal and water because he left his brain cells at the shed that day. Max took no chances in laughing at his unfortunate mishap. But he also saw this as a form of redemption. So, he backed up to the train and tried to push it all the way to the big station. And although he definitely struggled on the hill, he was able to get it done. He didn't know if he won the war, but he at least won this battle. As Max soon found out, it was enough to win the war, as when Henry came back, he was allowed to stay and became a permanent resident of Sodor, helping out with goods trains and passengers when other engines weren't able to do it. And that was Max's backstory. It's one massive headcanon and you don't have to agree with it, but hey, at least he has a backstory. That's more than what I can say for like half my OCs. But now, who are his friends? So who is Max friends with? Well, here's the thing with this section. I'm not going to go over every character, as there are way too many. So I'm instead just going to focus on the main 6. Thomas, Edward, Henry, Gordon, James, and Percy. So let's go there. So first up is friendship with Thomas. I don't know. These two work on different sides of the island and barely interact with each other, so if I had to say their friendship, it's more of just a general work colleague kind of friendship rather than a full-blown let's be friends forever. So that's the kind of relationship that Thomas and Max have. So what about Edward? Well, Max and him have a friendship, and that's because Edward helped Max deal with the trucks and helped him get over that problem. So naturally, Max grows friends with him. So these two have a pretty solid friendship, I'd say. Max and Henry. These two kind of have a friendship, and that's because, well, Max helped Henry out with his work, and so Henry naturally friended him. Though that doesn't mean he always sides with him. When Henry is acting like a knob with Gordon and James, he doesn't side with him. Speaking of Gordon, well, he's the one which Max butts heads the most with, and I would pin most of that on the attitudes. Max is kind of a laid-back guy, which when pushed to his limits, he can get angry. Gordon is just an arrogant arsehole full stop, so when Max's buttons is pressed, he often goes off on Gordon. But, well, Gordon was asking for it. James is kind of the middle ground of the big three, where Max and him do get along, but only when James is in a good mood. If James is in a bad mood, well, these two would probably get in a massive fight. And finally, Percy. Max has a lot of respect for Percy because of all the shunting and stuff. He kind of has the same friendship with Percy like with Edward. Max even offers to help from time to time. And this helped him come over the problem with trucks as well. So that's why he shares the same friendship with Percy like with Edward. That was Max the Great Western Hall class. Although his backstory is basically just one massive headcanon I have, again, at least he has a backstory. And that is everything on this first edition of OC Profiles. I hope you enjoyed this. If you want to see more, then, well, you can press the like button and you can also subscribe. And so you can see these guys in action as well. So, who's next? Well, it's not Yoshi, unfortunately, because he's not too developed right now. Next up will probably be Sweetheart. So until then, have a good one.